Good morning, or should I say aloha? This time last Sunday, I'd just gotten back home from 10 glorious days on the Hawaiian Islands, a little bit of vacation. And this time last Monday, I was at immediate care and found out that I had COVID. So, Kurt always likes to say something that made him laugh, so this is kind of funny. When the doctor came in and said, well, you don't have the flu, but you do have COVID. And then as we talked that through, and then as she was leaving the office, she said, did you have a good vacation? So, because of that, and in following doctor's directions, I am now able, enough time has passed, fever's gone, all that stuff, I'm now able to be out in public, but with a mask. So because of that, I'm going to stay up here, and everybody else who is speaking today is going to be speaking from down there, all right? So I'm happy to see you all. It's good to be home. And I also wanted to mention Jen Olson Padilla is here today to talk to us about One Revival Ministries. We've been supporting Jen since before she was born. And so we're going to be hearing a few words from her today as well. I'm going to be talking today about welcome. And it just seems like something that we do so casually and we think about so casually. But I want to dive into it just a little bit deeper today. And so with that, I do welcome you and welcome our singers today who are going to begin. The first song we will be singing together is, help me remember.
Many Gifts, One Spirit.
There you go. What number?
Number 114.
Okay, so stand as you're able and inclined and join in Many Gifts, One Spirit. Rob will welcome us this morning.
Good morning. I converted to the United Methodist Church in 1998. I'd been in a mainline Christian faith for many years, off and on, called Roman Catholicism. But it was a very easy transition for me to come into the Methodist Church because I was in a play with a clergyman who had a wife and kids. And that was really weird. I'd never met one of them before. It was in Antioch in 1997. His name was Kurt Gamlin. And a couple of the people who were in the play happened to belong to the Methodist Church where Kurt Gamlin was pastor in Antioch. So I just kind of walked in and I knew some people already. So it was pretty easy for me to kind of slide in. And of course I found it to be, charming is the wrong word, but inspiring, peaceful, serene, lots of music, good music, lots of friendly people, lots of social justice, really my kind of thing. So I don't have a whole lot of experience about being new in a church and having a difficult time, but before I got here, way back in the late 70s, early 80s, I really struggled with alcoholism and marijuana addiction, and I wound up going to this self-help group that is at the beginning of the telephone directory, it has letters like that, and those folks were very inviting. They talked a lot about unconditional love back then. People in the room were offered unconditional love. Didn't matter who you were, where you'd come from, what you'd done. If you wanted to be sober, hey, this was the place to be. Hi, how you doing? In the beginning of every meeting, is there anybody here for the very first meeting? Oh, would you tell us your name? Oh, God, what is this, Amway? My name's Rob. Oh, welcome. Clapping. Oh, no, what are they going to do to me? And then people would come up afterwards and shake my hand and say, hey, you have any problem getting a ride to the meeting? You need a ride home? Hey, there's some of us going out for coffee. Would you like to come? Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Kind of thing we do here. Interesting. So they always talked about the newcomer is the most important person in the room. Somebody just coming in, just trying to get, that person is the most important person in the room. Let's pay some positive attention to that person. Let's make them feel welcome. Now, it wasn't always that way in that fellowship that belonged to it for a long time. In fact, when it started out, back in the late 30s, there's a story about the co-founder went to the New York Public Psychiatric Institute and got a couple of folks who were in treatment there and brought them to their first meeting. And this is when there were only maybe like 100 sober alcoholics in this particular fellowship in New York and Akron. And they brought them in, and they happened to be black, and of course all the members of AA were white, and they were all male. So the co-founder said, would you mind if these fellas joined? And they took a vote and said, no, we don't want them. And he said, well, how about, could they be guests? Could you just kind of let them observe? Yeah, we'll let them observe. Okay, we'll let them be guests. Some 20 years later, when the fellowship had grown into hundreds of thousands of people all over the world who were staying sober, they came up with something called the traditions, which is kind of like the discipline, you know? And tradition number 3 was the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. The only requirement. Doesn't matter your age, your sex, your race, what you've done, have you been in prison, doesn't make any difference. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. It sounds a lot like our organization has moved in that direction. Basically, open hearts, open minds. Anybody who wants to be here is welcome here. That's what I keep hearing all the time, and especially at communion, you know. Anybody, come to the table, anybody who's here. There's a lot of things that are similar to some of the self-help 12-step organizations, which are spiritually based, and to our wonderful faith here in the United Methodist Church. What else do I want to say? I think I've pretty much said it all. So I'll finish with, welcome to worship. We are so glad you're here. And now the scripture will be read by Bob.
Thanks, Rob. That was awesome.
Good morning. Okay, our scripture is from Matthew 25, verses 31 through 40. When the Son of Man comes in his splendor, and all the angels with him, he will take his seat on his splendid throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another, just as a shepherd separates his sheep and goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand, and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at his right, "Come, you are blessed by my Father. Take possession of the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me to your home. When I needed clothes, you put them on me. When I was sick, you looked after me. And when I was in prison, you came to see me." Then the upright will answer, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and give you something to eat, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we ever see you a stranger and welcome you to our homes, or needing clothes and put them on you? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to see you?" And the king will answer them, "I solemnly say to you, every time you did a good deed to one of these most insignificant brothers of mine, you did a good deed to me."
That's one of my favorite scriptures. I always want to be a sheep. And if you've ever seen Godspell, "We Beseech Thee" follows that little skit, and it's a wonderful piece of music. So hi everybody. It's good to be home. Missed you all. But if you have an opportunity to ever go to Hawaii for any length of time, it's an absolutely beautiful. God is everywhere. If you're into nature, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. And so I am grateful to have had the vacation despite this little hiccup when I got home. So, how many of you remember Pastor Scott? All right. Well, I'm seeing some hands, but not everybody. Pastor Scott was the pastor we had before Kurt, and Pastor Scott's wife's name was Lori. And Lori one day brought a seemingly insignificant observation to church leadership. Lori pointed out that unless a person attended church here more than a few times, they wouldn't know where to go to find anything when they entered the doors. They wouldn't know how to find the nursery, the coat room, the bathroom. Because if you think about it, when you come in the door over here, the first thing you're faced with are stairs, right? Which way do I go? What's upstairs? What's downstairs? And then if you're not, this door over here, if you don't know where to go or how to find an elevator or how to get to the basement the other way, how to get to Fellowship Hall downstairs. But for those of us who had been attending here for so long, we were like, what? And then we thought about it. And we thought, there really was no intention on the part of church council or trustees or anybody in leadership to not have signage up. We just never looked at it from that point of view. Because this is our home, you don't have signs at home that tell people where to go to the bathroom, do you? You assume that when they come in, they know how to do that. So most of us could be guilty of not looking at our church. That was really about the most significant thing that we could feel guilt about, was not looking at our church building from the eyes of a new person entering. But once that was brought to our attention, we fixed it. I was going to check this morning. I think the signs are still up, are they? Okay, so we fixed it, right? And we learned our lesson. We know how to be more welcoming church, right? Then Kurt arrived. He wasn't here very long before he started showing the same concern Lori had raised, only on a different level. Kurt pushed and continues to push us to look at how welcoming we are in ways that signage alone may not be able to address. Kurt and others of you have raised questions about the welcoming nature of our church. Questions about the music we listen to, about traditional rituals. Traditional rituals of our church that are unfamiliar to people who don't attend regularly. Kurt has normalized church attire and has softened some of our most traditional rituals. Fairly recently, he preached about the barriers that churches create that serve to separate people from each other and, as worrisome, separate people from God. Kurt's tenacity on this subject has been helpful to me because I've started to see some things that I wasn't seeing before. Kind of like when you go to the eye doctor and they put the lenses in front of you and say, all right, which is it better? Click, click. Is it better? Click, click. Kind of like that. The Bible says a lot about welcoming. In Hebrews 13:2, be sure to welcome strangers into your home. By doing this, some people have welcomed angels as guests without even knowing it. And Luke 14:12 through 24. Then Jesus turned to his host and said, "When you throw a banquet, don't just invite your friends, relatives, or rich neighbors, for it's very likely that they will return the favor. It is better to invite those who never get an invitation." And today's lesson from Matthew: "Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of these, the least of these, my brothers, you did it for me." It would seem that by being welcoming, we are following Jesus. You know, from the time we're very small, we want to feel included. Think about the heartbreak you or one of your children or one of your grandchildren experienced by not getting that invitation to that elementary school classmates party. It's the not being invited piece that I want to talk a little bit about today. A couple of years ago, Emery and I moved into our current house. Our address was new, but our presence in the community was not. We have lived in McHenry for decades. I remember chuckling a little when we received the "Welcome to McHenry" packet at our new address. Do you guys remember the welcome wagon? Jen, not so much. Yeah. As stated on their website, Welcome Wagon was founded in Memphis, Tennessee in 1928 and is based, I didn't know this, it's based on an older practice carried out by the Conestoga wagons, hence the cover of your bulletin today. The Conestoga wagons, as travelers were going west, they would be on the prairie there to offer things that people might need for their journey. So that's how the neighborhood welcome wagon was born, in that kind of a spirit and with that kind of a history. Now, in the early days of welcome wagon, a neighborhood hostess would meet with the new families and tell them about their community, and while doing that, while having coffee and coffee cake, would offer the new person coupons for area businesses, right? Perfect way, and you could get, these are the churches, these are the doctors, these are the dentists. These are all opportunities, for you to find what you need. Well, the practice stopped in 1998. Now, I'm not going to ask you to say out loud, but think about why you think that might have happened. Because when I read it, I assumed it was stopped out of a concern for safety. I thought that maybe people didn't feel comfortable knocking on doors, kind of like, Girl Scout cookies, they don't go door to door anymore and that kind of thing. But that's not why it stopped. The practice of sending welcome wagon hostesses stopped because by 1998, most households had double income parents. Nobody was home anymore during the day. There wasn't anybody to have coffee with because mom was working. Interestingly, the Welcome Wagon was one of the first all-female companies in the United States, and it touched the lives of over 100 million households, including the White House. The presidents had a Welcome Wagon hostess who would come to their home as well. Though today hostesses are no longer going door to door, it is kind of warming to know that there's still some iteration of that practice that welcomes new members into a community, even if they have lived here for decades. I found it to be it felt very warm, it felt very good to receive that welcome. But as I think about those early days in Memphis, I can't help but wonder just who was welcomed. Or more to the point, who did not receive a personal call from a welcome wagon hostess? Were people who lived outside the mainstream culture of 1928 offered coffee, tea cakes, and coupons? You know, many black and brown moms wouldn't have been able to receive a visit anyway because they worked out of the home way before 1928. Was there the opportunity for a black woman to be a welcome wagon hostess for her new neighbors? After all, in most neighborhoods in 1928, it was a pretty safe bet that the people living next door to you had the same skin hue as yours. Did white hostesses go into black and brown neighborhoods? I ask these questions without knowing the answers. The online research around Welcome Wagon is pretty sparse. But given the civil rights movement came 40 years later and struggled to gain acceptance in 1968, I'm going to posit that the Welcome Wagon was, like most things in America in 1928, for whites only. You know, one comment travelers from other countries often make about Americans is how friendly we are, especially those of us from the Midwest. That's nice to hear. I don't know about you, but I certainly like to greet people on the street, in the store, on the bike path. I find it very easy to say hello. But welcome is more than hello. The purpose of welcome is to not only introduce someone to a new place, but to make them feel at ease. Welcome offers someone up for acceptance. Hello is more superficial and serves as kind of a baseline acknowledgement that somebody exists. And as I was thinking about today's message, it didn't go unnoticed that every Sunday in the opening I conclude by saying, "Welcome to worship." And on the back of our bulletin, you can follow along with me, we have important words of welcome. We are a fully welcoming congregation. As a church, we support, affirm, and embrace people from all walks of life, family configurations, religious backgrounds, racial and cultural identities, ages, economic status, marital status, differing abilities, sexual orientations, and gender identities. Though this statement is ours, I've noticed that many churches are claiming their identity by writing similar statements. But identifying who is welcome begs the question, who is not? Are we just as guilty as the 1928 Welcome Wagon organization of putting up barriers that exclude people? When we were growing up and going to church, did we ever think to look around and see that most of the families around us looked just like us? Did it ever occur to us that there may have been people who weren't in church because they had to work on Sunday just to make ends meet? Or maybe not every family had a mother and a father. Or not every family spoke English. We grew up attending places of worship, and this does qualify you, Jen, as well, where only some were welcomed, though we probably didn't even get that. We didn't understand that. It was never intentional, and nothing was ever stated out loud. But then and now, we put up barriers that keep some people from forming relationships with each other and with God. Lately, I've been paying attention to the vocabulary we use in church. Church vernacular. Technical words. They create barriers. Words like narthex, chalice, hymnal, offering, ecumenical, sacrament. Church really is a foreign language for some. If you haven't grown up studying the language, and you walk in the door for the first time, it might as well be Greek. And even the parts of our faith that we think we understand can be a barrier. I mean, Christians think they understand the Bible, right? The very book that serves as the foundation for Christian faith can create a huge barrier to relationships. People outside the faith see Christians arguing about the meaning of the Bible. They hear the condemnation and anger in our voices as we argue with each other about what Jesus said. And they don't want any part of it. And sometimes people on the inside are too self-righteous to care. Another thing that Christians think they understand is that God is love, and Jesus came as the personification of that love. But then we struggle, argue, disgrace, and condemn each other over the definition and acceptable expressions of love. If one of the goals of a Jesus follower is to strengthen relationships, why do we keep shooting ourselves in the foot? Yes, Christians get in the way of the welcoming mission and vision statements written on the back of so many of our church bulletins. The concept of the welcome wagon is and was solid. Help your new neighbors feel accepted in their community. But somewhere in the execution of this love thy neighbor model, the wagon can become broken. The wheels fall off. And if any faith community is going to survive, it's important that we not only look at who is welcome in our church home, but who, consciously or unconsciously, is not. As people of faith, it is our calling to show the world a higher love. If the church is going to continue to survive, it is our responsibility as people of faith to tear down the barriers that separate us from each other and from God, so that now and in the future, our places of worship are truly welcoming to all. Amen.
Now we've come to that time in our service where we lift up our joys and prayers. If you have a yellow card, this is how we traditionally do it. We write something on the yellow card, and Lisa's picking them up. If you're watching from home and you have something or someone you'd like to lift up, just put it in the chat box. So while Lisa's collecting the cards, Gina?
Yeah, thank you. I have not heard anything recently, and maybe some of you have a little bit more information, but I know that Linda Adams has been with her brother. Does anybody know any more about that? Okay, Pat, yeah.
She went out, I think, on Tuesday. Her brother was into hospice on Wednesday. And by Friday, he was sitting up and feeding himself. So she didn't know when she'd be coming back, but her sister and her are with him. He's 94, and he never had children, so he's alone. But she is with him.
And this isn't the first time she's made that trip, right?
She was out there, I believe, in July or even in August to help him. And so he's still in hospice.
All right. Well, we will certainly lift that family up. Linda and her sister, I'm sure, are in need of they need to feel our arms around them long distance and our prayers, and so prayers for Linda. Obviously, the other thing that has happened just recently that we desperately need to hold in our prayers is Israel. and the Palestinian conflict has escalated, and so we need to keep the people in that region. And a long time ago, Mike Miller was a pastor here, and he was talking about the fact that that area of the world known as the Fertile Crescent, and it's called that because it has the oil and, you know, olive oil in the day and now oil, and it's just such an economic, politically, and the major religions of the world come out of that area, and it's always been so volatile. And if we can just continue to pray for peace for that region of the world. We have a lot of people traveling. I was going to ask Betsy, have you heard from Kurt? Do you have anything to add from him?
Yes, he is in the upper part of Ecuador, and today he and our younger son, Trevor, are going to watch. They produce a lot of cheeses up there, specialty cheeses, so we're going to watch how they make that. They also do a lot of things with tanning of leather and whatnot, so they've been invited to watch that. And then our youngest son will be flying home on Thursday, and then Kurt will be going into the Amazon with a guy. Not by yourself. So, you may not see it if he goes in there. So, anyway, yeah, just keep him in your prayers, especially prayers, especially because I don't think that I'm just praying. He doesn't get bitten by a mosquito that dengue fever, so he doesn't get dengue fever or malaria. He's been given
Yikes.
an injection for malaria, but dengue fever can get that, and so it's kind of watched away.
So before you sit down, how's Ryan?
Ryan, our oldest son, who is an anesthesiologist up in Bend, Oregon, many probably don't know, but he had a very freak accident where he broke his neck, and he was going to have to go one way, a little bit further down or up. He would have been a quadriplegic, and I think that the other day he was trying to be talking about it. He was alive. So we're very, very thankful. And because he is the person he is and very determined, he's always been active, he's doing much better in his pain. He's got this very rigid head and neck brace. So he has walking sticks and he's been doing 15 hours a day.
Oh my goodness. He's his father's son, isn't he? Well, that's, yes.
He's ever so aware of all ever so thankful for your first.
And one other thing I'd like to add before I turn it over to Rob. So one of the excursions, my son and I did this. We were at the top of the Haleakala crater on Maui, and that is a dormant volcano. And we rode our bikes down it, right? So for the guide to get us to where we were going, we went about 6,500 feet up. And we had to be taken up there in a van. And so we're going through burned out forests. And the woman who was driving the van was originally from Lahaina. And so we had an awesome conversation. And what I wanted to share with you is that as we were going through these woods, the fire was about 5 or 6 weeks ago now. It's healing already. The green is coming through. There's so much devastation. It's so sad. But boy, there was just that glimmer of hope, and it was really beautiful to see some green in those burned out woods. So I wanted to share that with you as well. Okay, Rob.
From Betsy, we already knocked off 3 of her things. Judy Williams' Celebration of Life is on Saturday, October 21st at 10:30 with family and memorial services. Is that here? Yeah, here. Let's see what else. Oh, and prayers for Jen Olson Padilla and the ministry she's involved in. Okay, this is from, I'm not sure. Oh, Nancy Johnson. My close friend Barb with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, responding well to chemo, but has a long road ahead of her. Prayers for healing. This is from Dan Johnson. Please pray for the Holy Land and its people that they learn to love their children more than they hate their enemies. Well said. Okay. This is from Dixie. Jerry Cox, brother-in-law, starting chemo this week. From Pat Wilson, prayers for Linda Adams and her 94-year-old brother. He has gone into hospice. Linda's one of our song leaders. Linda and her sister are with him in Ohio. Prayers for him and his family. Also from Pat, my neighbor Marge with stage 4 cancer. From Carol, Glinda Tonkin, she's having heart surgery on October the 11th. And Betsy, I'm having a procedure on Friday the 13th. And whose birthday today? Oh, Betsy Smouse. Oh, Betsy, okay. Yeah, we got so many Betsy's around here. Betsy's having a procedure on Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, that's a great day to pick. And whose birthday today? Mike's, okay. Congratulations, happy birthday. Okay, that's it. Does anybody else have anything? Do we have anything from the chat box? No. Okay. Then, let us join together and sing our prayer song, Sanctuary. God, when we feel the most powerless over the cruelty of those who make war, over illness and suffering, over those who persecute the innocent, and for those who mistake kindness for weakness. We thank you, God, for giving us the courage to remain true to the words that Jesus gave us when he taught us to pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, today's offering words. Love and kindness are never wasted. They always make a difference. They bless the ones that receive them, and they bless you, the giver. These are the words of Barbara DeAngelos. She is an American relations consultant and an influential teacher in the field of personal and spiritual growth. The Church of McHenry is blessed by our members and visitors who show their love and kindness each week. You may place your offering in the back, plate at the back of the sanctuary, or use the QR giving code on the back of the bulletin. If you're watching remote, you can mail your offering in to 3717 Main Street, or you can visit the church website. As always, we appreciate all your generous gifts to the church.
Thank you, Arnie. Well, I'd like to, at this time, welcome our guest, Jen, up to say a few words. By way of introduction, for those of you who don't know, Jen is a lifelong, I don't know if member is the right word, but Jen and our son John are only a couple of weeks apart, and I've mentioned before, I think, that her mom and we had kind of like a pool going to see who was going to have the baby first, and I won, I believe. But Jen grew up in the church, used to sing with Joyful Noise, used to be part of everything that all of our kids were part of in the 90s, and went away to U of I and got a degree in astrophysicist, become an astrophysicist, right? And God called her, and I'll let her take it from there. So Jen, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. Let me know if you can't hear me okay, but it's always so good to come back here. For me, I've said it before, it's very much like coming home, because I did grow up here from day one all the way until now. So thank you so much for having me. So my name is Jennifer Olson Padilla, and I have a ministry in Honduras. We work with at-risk young people, and so we focus on 3 areas, which are prevention, intervention, and rehabilitation. The community that we live and work in is a community of about 10,000 people, but it has 0 infrastructure. We don't have any gas stations or banks or stores. So there's basically nowhere for people to work. So most people go into the capital city, which is about an hour away to work, and which leaves many young people in the community pretty much by themselves. And so we have focused largely on young people between the ages of 15 and 25 in our ministry, especially in these past years. And especially last year and this year, 2023, we focus a lot on prevention. So in our prevention program, we have a school sponsorship program where this past year, 2023, our school year in Honduras runs from February to November. So they're actually just about to finish. So this year we were able to support 25 young people from it's 3rd grade up through high school. And then we have 4 university students that we also support. We also have a resource center and a small library that we've been growing in our ministry house that we hope will provide a safe place for the young people in our community, not only to go read books and to go learn about what they need to know for school, but also where they can learn who God is and learn about his unconditional love. So it's interesting to me that this was the message on welcoming today. Our second aspect of our ministry is intervention, and intervention is most certainly one of the most difficult areas that we work in. We work a lot in the streets and a lot in the prison system in Honduras. We work a lot with the local gang that operates in our community as well. And so it's, like I said, it's interesting that this was the message today, because our entire focus of the intervention is essentially to make young people feel welcome and loved. Because 9 out of 10 times, and probably even with greater odds, young people don't go into a gang, they don't get into the streets because they really want to. They go there because they feel that they don't have a safe place. They don't have a family. They don't have a place where they feel welcome. And so they go to the one place that will always welcome them, which unfortunately is the streets, drugs, alcohol, the gang. And of course that leads to death or prison. And so it's, like I said, very interesting to me. We had a young person, his name is Fernando, he's 16, and he is part of our intervention program. So he actually does still study in school, and we support him for small needs in school, but he's very much in the process of coming out of drug addiction. So you can imagine he's 16 years old, and he's coming out of that process right now. And just a few months ago, he was at our house, and we have many young men that come over almost daily to eat because they don't have food in their own homes. And so we feed about 8 to 10 people a day because they don't have anywhere else to go to eat. And so he was at the house and he said, "Mom, why do you love us when you know we're not doing good things?" And it struck me because it was such a big question for him. How could you love me if you know I'm not, in your mind, doing the right things, quote unquote? And of course, as he is still battling with drug addiction, we could certainly argue and say he really isn't in the right place, and he's not with his with his health, but it's interesting to me that he felt still the welcome from our family and the welcome from our home, and of course the welcome from God in our home, that it was enough for him to ask about it. How could you still love us? And I said, because God loved me long before I accepted his love. And that's our goal, is to share his love with you guys so that you know what his unconditional love is through us, the best that we can model it as very flawed human beings, of course. So aside from our intervention program, we also have a rehabilitation program. And so what happens when a young person stops using drugs? What happens when they leave the gang, when they come out of prison? We, of course, encourage all of those things, but we also can't then say, okay, good job, that's it. And so we sort of cycle them back into our ministry prevention program. And so they either go back to school or they'll learn some sort of vocation. We have, like I said, 4 university students who are studying with us this year, and 2 of them are actually ex-gang members who are also ex-prisoners. And so it's amazing to me that we're able to not only encourage them to leave that very damaging lifestyle, but we are also able to encourage them and support them as they go on to the next step to being healthy and very productive leaders in our community. And so that's just a little bit about our ministry, and I want to thank you all so much because, as Gina said, you have literally supported me since I was not even walking yet. And so thank you so much for all of your support. And I do want to share, we have some t-shirts outside for sale. We have 2 bags of coffee, so we can either auction them off or you can fight for them. And then I did want to share just it sounds like a very basic need, but for us it's a very big need. So because we live an hour outside of the city, several years ago we purchased a truck. Because we live in Honduras, where roads are not quite like they are here, we had to get new tires in 2020, so the year after we bought the car, because they hadn't been changed. And so this year we're actually having to change them again. And so that's actually our biggest need right now, because without our truck, living outside of the community, we have no transportation. And so we're kind of at the point that when I get back, that's the very first thing that we have to do. And so I do ask you very humbly to consider helping us with that. And as the year goes on, we'll also share some more needs for school sponsorships for the following school year, so for 2024. And so even now in October, I ask you also to prayerfully consider supporting a young person to either continue school or to go back to school, or to begin university to continue university. And so again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll be outside, just right outside in the narthex after the service. And I thank you so much, and God bless.
So Jen, if someone has questions, you can talk to them after church. If someone wants to make some kind of a donation, cash, check, Venmo, what are you set up to take today?
Yeah,
Cash or check? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And do you have like a email address or something where if someone wants to
I do. So I do have some, I guess, flyers outside in the narthex as well, and feel free to take one, and you can take that home. It has all of the information as well to donate online too.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the work you do. Well, we are going to end our service today with a song that may not be as familiar to the congregation as the other ones that I've chosen for today, but it is a song that praise team started singing, I don't know, a few months ago maybe, and it's just a beautiful song about inclusion, about acceptance, about love. It's called Draw the Circle Wide, and it's actually in your hymnal, although we're not going to be singing the hymnal version. We're going to be following the PowerPoint. So, draw the circle wide, stand and sing with gusto and abandon. We can't make it through life on our own, folks. We have got to have one another from the time we are born until the end of our days. And that's been true of humanity from the very beginning. We can't live in isolation. We can't judge, we can't criticize, but we can, as followers of Jesus Christ, love. That's all we have to do. That's all we're required to do. Love each other and love the Lord our God with all our hearts and minds and souls. So go into this week knowing that you are loved immensely, and give a little bit of that away every opportunity you have. Go in peace. Go in joy. Go in love. God bless.
Amen.